Hi, everyone, and welcome to Workshop Wednesday. I'm Jeanette Mulvey, the Content Director at CO, a publication for small businesses from the Chamber of Commerce. Listen, we know this is a really challenging time for small businesses, and our goal with Workshop Wednesday is to bring you expert advice and inspiration to keep your business running through this really, really difficult time. Today, we're going to be talking about keeping your company culture alive and keeping your employees engaged during the coronavirus. Later, I'll be taking your questions, so be sure to type them into the panel on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you see a question you like, definitely upvote it, so I'm asking the most popular ones first. Today, I'd like to introduce you to my panel. First, we have Zawadi Bryant, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Nightlight Pediatric Urgent Care. She runs 8 pediatric after-hours urgent clinics throughout the greater Houston area. We also have Joel Clark, who is the CEO and co-founder of Kodiak Cakes, based in Park City, Utah. Joel's company's pancake and waffle mixes are sold in thousands of stores across the country. And we have Alissa Henriksen, co-president of Gray Search and Strategy, based in the Minneapolis area, and they provide nationwide recruiting and employee engagement services throughout the country. So welcome to all of you. So panel, we conducted a Twitter poll the other day to find out how our business is connecting with their employees during this time. And what we found out is that the 2 most popular ways are through team video calls, which probably isn't surprising, and with one-on-one check-ins with their employees. But that's just the beginning. So today I want to dig in a little deeper with you guys and get some advice on how you're handling this really unique time in managing your teams and what kind of advice you can offer to small businesses. Zawadi, I am going to start with you. You're in a really unique situation because your employees are essential healthcare workers, so you have to think about their safety, but you've also experienced a drop in business because you're specializing in pediatrics and kids aren't in school, so they're not getting hurt in sports or getting sick at school. So you've seen a drop in business, but also a need to really focus on your workers' health and safety. So I wanted to start with you and ask you, how are you going about communicating those concerns to your employees?
Well, thank you for having me. First thing that we did was we brought together our medical staff and asked them what policies and protocols we needed to put in place to ensure our employee safety. And so we changed our check-in process. We made sure we procured the number of PPE, the amount of personal protective equipment we needed for our team to be safe. And so we rewrote our policies and protocols and communicated that to the team as soon as possible. And then what we did next is we contacted each of our team members and just did a wellness check. We called and wanted to know how they were doing with all of this. It was very overwhelming to everybody. And so we wanted to do a check-in, to do, an anxiety check, is particularly, like you said, we are frontline responders. People come into the clinic and we don't know what they have. And for some people that was very concerning, especially in the beginning when no one really knew the extent of what was going on and how infectious this virus really was. And so we did the wellness check and we asked, our team members, how comfortable are you with coming into the clinic? And not surprisingly, some people said, you know what, I have a lot on my plate right now. I have to homeschool my child, or I have other things going on, and you can either take me off the shift or reduce my hours. So right away, some people decided that they wanted to modify their work schedule. And so we took that into account. And then, we have just been in constant contact with each of our employees. We have enacted, like you said, the periodic check-ins. Weekly, we're checking in with employees, whether they're working on the shift or if they're working from home. And so we just had to adopt and become flexible. Some of our employees, to our surprise, had some underlying conditions. And so we had to give them work accommodations for that and create ways for them to work at home. so that they would not be in the clinic at all. So we've just, like most folks, had to come up with ways to first address the safety concerns of not only our employees, but our patients, and then just be flexible in how we were going to deal with that on a one-on-one basis.
Right. Okay, thank you. Joel, you also are in a unique situation in that you guys were really focused in office. You were not a remote work environment. And at the same time that you had to figure out how to have everybody work from home, your sales are through the roof because, of course, everyone is shopping in the grocery store, and your products, both direct to consumer on your website and through grocery stores, there's like a huge surge in demand. So how have you been managing keeping connected to them at the same time while you're working harder than ever?
Yeah, that was that was really challenging because suddenly we were hit with, I mean, it's like everybody, all of us were just, this was so all of a sudden, and we were hit with all this panic buying in the grocery stores, and so our orders just started to surge like crazy because everybody was eating at home more and staying home. And then we had to suddenly deal with a work from home schedule right at the same time. So it was really kind of, it was really hard on the operations team, had a ton of work to do suddenly, and to go remote in the midst of all that. A couple things that we did that I think were really helpful from the beginning. So once we made the announcement that we were all going to work from home, I remember talking to Cameron, he's my president, and the two of us were, so we usually have a Monday morning meeting usually every Monday. Every once in a while we cancel if we don't have, a pretty good agenda, but we, I remember thinking, well, maybe we won't have a Monday morning meeting for a little while, and we'll just kind of, see how this goes. And then, we had the immediate thought, we're like, no, we need to make sure we're having our regular meetings and never miss a meeting, because we need to make sure that we're in constant contact. So what we did is we began having remote Monday meetings, and we have a really awesome people and culture team. It's kind of our HR team. We call them people and culture, and they have been incredibly proactive, like from the beginning of this. And so what they started to do, we immediately had a manager training meeting remotely. So we've been using Zoom like a lot of people, and so we immediately had a training on how to manage teams remotely. And we started getting feedback from teams on, hey, what's working, and what are you guys dealing with? And then had some great training in there. So that was really helpful. And then, that our people and culture team just went to work on other ways to just stay connected. And, we started to have like we had a lunch and learn recently on just a random topic, like on personal finances. I mean, we've done all kinds of things. We already were on Slack and some other that's our kind of instant messaging platform, and that was helpful, and we use that all the time. We've just encouraged people to use video chat when they're talking to each other instead of just phone calls, and I got to tell you, that has just actually been really, really helpful. And we have had virtual happy hours, and we've had a lot of other things from our fun committee that we have, and so all of those things I think have really helped us to stay connected. And I got to tell you, this working from home schedule has gone better than I anticipated.
Well, that's great. So, Alissa, you have the benefit of working with lots of companies all across the country, so you really can see what's happening on a broader scale. So what are you seeing in terms of how companies are managing to keep their culture alive during this time? Because that's not even an easy thing to do when everybody's in the same place. So what kind of trends are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I think Zawadi and Joel did a pretty good job of talking about the things that have really contributed to the companies that are putting a significant amount of focus on culture, and that is number one, communication, right? Communication is key, and you have to be over communicating from safety to how are you doing, asking the simple questions about how are you doing, because we need to remember that people are also dealing with homeschooling. I have a 5 and an 8-year-old, and so homeschooling is a big deal. And as leaders, we have to remind ourselves that we're not just dealing with the shift of working from home, but we're dealing with the shift of having to now help our children at home. And a lot of us are now figuring out how to work with our spouses at home. And so there's the communication piece and asking the right questions. Along with that, the virtual component. So Joel, our clients, and I think you hit it right on the head. Every meeting is really a virtual meeting. It's seeing people, right? When you are going into the office, you are seeing people every single day. And that sense of connection is really important. And so those that understand that and have that, I think that strong sense of culture are every single time they're communicating, for the most part, they're setting up a virtual connection. So Zoom is a big one for us as well, a number of other platforms, but that has really helped people feel like they're still a part of a team and they're still working and moving in the same direction. The fun component, from bingo to happy hour to think tanks. What can we be doing today? What can we take some time to do? Think of a creative service offering that we could provide our clients when we come out of this. Really making some of this stuff more fun to get their minds off of the other pieces that they're probably dealing with overall, and just listening. You know, it's kind of amazing when you sit back and you listen to your team. You'll see who's going to step up and really start bringing some other interesting ideas to the table. All of those components have helped companies really stay connected to their culture, which is so important right now. It's key. And we're checking in with our clients regularly. And I would say these are the top things that they're doing consistently to keep that engagement and keep that focus.
Great, thank you. Zawadi, I know that you've had to cut some of your employees' hours, which is challenging. And your managers also agreed to take a pay cut. So I'm wondering how you communicated that need to your employees and how they responded, and if you were surprised by their response. You're on mute, so just make sure you unmute. Okay, good.
The great thing about our company is that we keep our team members engaged and informed. And so, we talk about the numbers during our quarterly meetings, and we talk about the health of the business. And so it was no surprise to them that we needed to do something. And as a matter of fact, that's what propelled us to act so quickly, because they were asking, what are we going to do? Because we're not seeing patients, and they understand very acutely that patients equals revenue. So, so the great thing is that, I have an executive team that we came together and we looked at multiple different scenarios and how could we respond as quickly as possible with as little impact to the employees as possible. And so we came up with a scenario where we kept all the clinics open, but reduced all the clinics' hours. And so then we took that to the management team and asked them for their feedback on how we should roll this out and how we should communicate this. And as a team, we came together with the frequently asked questions and talking points of what we needed to do and communicate to the team members. And so each of us took a list of employees to call and to talk to and to go over the talking points, why we made the decision like we did, and how that was going to impact the employees. And so not to my surprise, most of them understood exactly where we were going and why we had to make those changes. And the thing that wasn't surprising, but still it was humbling how open they were. How can I help? What else can I do to help the company? And so that was just really humbling and heartwarming that was the response. And then we followed that up with a company-wide email that I sent out, just kind of over again, communicating our thought process of where we are, how we came to the decision, and how it was going to impact them. And then we had a Zoom call the next day where, I wanted them to bring their questions because they had to kind of marinate with them for a while. I understood it was a major change. And so I'm like, think about what's going on and let's talk about it, tomorrow, bring all of your questions. And so we had over half the companies show up to that, and the call was for an hour, and they asked a lot of great questions that we didn't even think about, and you know, we took that back to the team to get the answers. But you know, it's like you said, it's just communication in multiple forms, and phone calls and emails and HR correspondence, and you know, one-on-ones, just making sure that they feel like they're being heard and that we're listening.
Thank you. So Alissa, Zawadi's an example of how during this time there's a lot of messaging and communication to employees that's not, you know, great news. Everything's not Zoom happy hours. So
Right.
do you have some advice on how to communicate messaging that's difficult?
Yeah. I mean, number one, empathy is huge, right? And the way that you're communicating today is never going to be forgotten, right? This is setting the stage and the tone for your future as a business. And so being transparent and telling your employees exactly what you're going through, you know, to the best of your ability, to tell them the challenges you're being faced with and the things that you're dealing with. That's okay, because we're all going through something today, and they're going to appreciate that, and they're going to, I think, like Zawadi said, they're going to say, what else can I do? How can I help? That's going to be remembered. And so start today. If you have not been clear and transparent about what you're dealing with, start doing that, because then when you need to share that message, if you need to lay people off, it's okay. You're not perfect. There are many businesses. Most businesses are having to make those tough decisions. That's not going to be, that decision to lay people off isn't going to define your future. What is going to define your future and the way that you're viewed is how you handle yourself through this process. So that empathy is going to be huge, and just being very clear, open, honest, transparent, and again, listen.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Joel, what are you hearing from your employees in terms of what's working for them during this time in terms of your communication?
Yeah, you know, one thing we've done is we've done a lot of surveys with employees as well as we've gone through this process to just find out, hey, what are we doing? What else would you like to see? And you know, some of the feedback we've had is, you know, people have really appreciated the regular communication. Kind of what you guys have talked a lot about this, but people really do appreciate that. I mean, I read an article about this, about just kind of how to manage teams when you're remote like this. And one of the points was update, even when you don't have an update. So it was just like, it was kind of the same thing, like really communicate. So that was one that people really appreciated. They appreciate the Monday meetings. And, you know, another thing that people really appreciated was just some of the cultural things that we already had set up, like having a really collaborative culture has helped, because then it's, you know, that's like even more needed now because people feel a little more isolated. So you need to be able to feel like I can call this person or I can call that person. So that's been really, really helpful. You know, and then I think people have, you know, something else people commented on is just, we have a really good accountability and kind of check-in structure at Kodiak Cakes. And that's been really helpful too, because we don't have to, you know, if you don't have one, create it. But it's helpful because then you know that, hey, we have weekly check-ins or more, monthly deep dives. And so those types of like processes for, you know, how to manage that, people have actually really appreciated that, because it helps people stay connected and be in regular communication with their managers. And then, you know, the other thing people have really liked, they just have really enjoyed just the fun elements that we've brought to the table. You know, that the lunch and learns, we've done virtual fitness classes, and, you know, a lot of those types of things just kind of help people stay connected, and it's pretty fun. So I think people have, you know, overall the feedback's been pretty good, and on how our, you know, especially our people and culture team have really handled this.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to go to our Q&A now. Our number one most popular asked question. I think I'm going to ask this of you, Zawadi, first, because you and I talked, and I know that you've had to change some of the way you actually do business and ask your employees to change. For example, I know you have employees doing a lot more virtual doctor's visits and doing that from home, and you've changed your hours too. So this person says, they need to change the way they're doing business and assign workers to different tasks or assignments than they had before. Some are willing to make that change, but, you know, others are not. So how do they insist that employees take on these new roles because it's necessary, even if it's not part of their original job description?
Right. And so I think, all of us have to remain flexible. I mean, we're doing things that as a company, we never thought we would do before. We're in healthcare, so we're very protective of our data, but now we're doing telemedicine or virtual visits. And so, we do it from 6 a.m. to midnight. And so that's been one way we've been able to, add more visits to our portfolio. And so we can see patients throughout the whole state of Texas, which is great. But that means that more people work from home, and we, don't have laptops for everybody. And so we've been very protective about giving people access to, our remote desktop services. But, with our IT team's help, we have enabled people to work from home, to do those virtual visits by giving them remote desktop access. And so that's been great. And most people have been receptive to that. And so I think, again, by communicating the necessity to be flexible on all ends, on our end as well as the employees' end, this is temporary. Some of these things I think are here to stay. And so, right now we're just like, this is what we need to do to get through this current situation. But, some of these things may be here to stay.
Right. Okay. Alissa, this person says, I'm uncertain at this point how a return to normal will look. How do I communicate this uncertainty with my employees in a way that's still assuring?
That's a really good question. And I don't think you need to have all the answers. I think we are feeling this sense of, just being overwhelmed as leaders or owners that we need to have all the answers. And we can't. So much of this is out of our control. Cut yourself a little bit of slack and just pay attention to the things that are bringing your business opportunity and the things that you can probably go away with as you move forward. But the uncertainty right now is there for everybody. And I'm going to go back to communication. Even if you don't have an update, even if there's not something that is, glaring, you want to keep that communication going. You want to talk about the challenges because, again, as a team, you're stronger, right? Your team, when you have a good team, the conversations that come out of that transparency is pretty impactful. And those things are going to help you make decisions as you move forward. And when we go back into the workplace, things are going to forever be different, no matter what. We know that. And so we just have to recognize it, be okay with it, and then just start making baby steps into that direction. But again, transparency is key.
Great, thank you. Joel, how do you address an employee who is creating negative energy and discontent among other employees? This person says, we feel empathetic about their stress and experience and have tried to help them through this, but they continue to be toxic.
That's a great question. And I think the way I would answer that, I think, is first, one thing we did at Kodiak Cakes that I think has really helped us, and it's become just really kind of a foundational element of our business, is we wrote down and defined our culture, a few years ago, and it's really clear. And like it's things like be awesome to work with, don't gossip, be collaborative, be empowering. There are all these types of things. And then what we do is we hold each other accountable for the culture. So 50% of our bonuses are based on what we accomplish. The other 50% is how we accomplish it. So it's by living the Kodiak code, as we say. So that's really our culture. So when you have those types of things pop up, like if someone's gossiping or being toxic or not being awesome to work with or not being collaborative, whatever, you can go to them and it's an easier conversation because they are being held accountable to that standard. And so, so if they are, then it's easy to say, look, you're not doing this. And in your weekly check-ins, the managers need to be very direct, but collaborative and empowering. And you don't have to do it. It's the way these things are handled But when those things happen, you cannot tolerate it at all. It has to be hit directly, and then those things you got to hit them right away so they don't linger, because it does become toxic. The other thing I would just say is, if you haven't done that, and this speaks to a little bit to the last question that was asked, but crisis does allow for change, and people are open to change in a crisis. And so, this is a great opportunity for businesses to create a culture, if you don't, or define it. Every business has one, but if you don't like where it's going, then redefine the culture, make some changes, and then really start holding your teams accountable to that culture that you define.
Right. Okay. So I'm not sure who to ask this one of. I'll just ask it of the group. This person says, how do you handle if you have to let someone go during this time? Which obviously it's not a great time to have to do that. I don't know. I said I wouldn't do this to you guys. So does anyone want to jump in and answer?
I can. I mean, they're going to be understanding, even though this is a difficult time. If you've been very transparent about the challenges you've been faced with, you have to sit down, be very clear. Your business is being affected. Your company is. This is not an easy decision. This is very difficult to have to be put in this position. When I've checked in with our clients that all have had to make these tough decisions, the one thing that they've said is that they wish they didn't have to be put in this position. They didn't know that this is something they would be facing even 30 days ago. And so, we're all trying to manage this the best way possible. But by giving them that, feedback, by saying, you did a great job, you've been instrumental, you've done so many things, it's at least going to give them some closure. I did have somebody reach out to me yesterday who's a fantastic candidate, incredible background, was let go with zero warning, no communication, just you're done today. That's going to stick with him forever, and he's never going to forget the way that he was treated in that process. And he's one person that, at a minimum, we're all connected to 600 people. You have to remember the power of connection. So it's how you handle yourself and how you move forward that will be remembered.
Great, thank you. Zawadi, I have a couple of questions from people saying that they don't know how to handle either employees who have been exposed to the virus or employees whose family members work in environments where they're more likely to be exposed, and they're not sure how to deal with that and how to communicate that to their other employees. Since you're working in a medical capacity, maybe you could address that.
Yeah, so we did have some of that happening with us, is that some of our employees were exposed. And so we had to follow the CDC guidelines for quarantine. And so each of them had various different circumstances. So again, treating it one by one. We did have a policy in place regarding employees that either had the COVID-19 or were exposed to it or were traveling. And so we just had to look at the CDC guidelines and follow all of the reasons why you would quarantine yourself. And so in each of those various different circumstances, we followed the guidelines. Some of our employees, like I said, had to work from home. Some opted to take their PTO. Some opted to take the medical leave. And so there are some federal, there's some federal support regarding payroll, regarding if you have to quarantine an employee up to 14 days. So I would definitely get with your accountant or CPA or your HR department on that. But you have to, again, communicate the policy, communicate to the employee when something does happen, who do they contact? And here are the steps we're going to take. And so they don't feel ashamed or scared, but that we have their back. This is how we're going to respond to it in a very one-on-one basis, but we're going to follow the CDC guidelines.
Great, thank you. That's a tricky one. Joel, this person says, now that work life and home life are blurred, how do I strike the balance of showing that I truly care about my employees' personal experience during the pandemic, but while maintaining boundaries and not prying?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think we've all kind of seen it where it's like, yeah, you're on meetings and I don't know, kids come in the room and all that. And it's like, we're all it's interesting because we're all more aware of each other and there's a little more of a human element that comes into it. So there is a little bit of a positive to that. There's more vulnerability there, but I think, I think what it comes down to is, does every team member in your staff have very clear expectations? Do they have very clear goals and metrics that they're being measured by? And then I think really, to me, it comes down to that. I mean, if you've got really clear metrics and you're holding your teams accountable to that, it's like, I think then we all have to just be really flexible in how it gets done right now. I mean, I think, that's where it's like, hey, we're going to be flexible. How you get it done, that's okay. But as long as people are really meeting their goals and they're accomplishing what they're supposed to be doing, then we're fine. So I think it just gets down to the management of having those clear expectations and making sure that managers are on those goals, and then I think you can't worry about everything else.
Okay, thank you. Alissa, I'm gonna sort of combine two questions here. This person says they manage a business that is basically doing drive-through service only right now. And that means that their employees are working, but they have these big chunks of downtime and they're struggling with how to keep people engaged during that downtime. And then separately, someone is sort of saying also they want to make sure their employees are taking vacation during this time because presumably they have some downtime, so this would be a good time for them to take the vacation, and because they don't want the liability of everybody's vacation being in the second half of the year. So I just, if you have any insights into kind of both of those issues.
Yeah, so I'll start with the downtime. One of the things that we ask our clients is that what are you having your employees do when there's some time, right? Outside of setting up maybe a happy hour or doing something fun, they're asking them to look at a process, or they're asking them to look at things that need to be tied up, loose ends. I mean, it's just like your home, right? I mean, think of the number of projects we're all probably knocking out at our house that have been hanging over our head forever. It's the same thing for your business and the things that you've wanted to accomplish, or maybe you've wanted to, go after something new and different, but it required a fair amount of research. Tap into that, see who's going to raise their hand and dig in a little bit deeper into checking some of those things out, because now's the time. And I also think it's interesting to see the people who will raise their hand without even being asked, and the ones that are stepping forward and saying, hey, I've really wanted to tackle this. But you as an owner or as a leader, you probably have a list of things you've wanted to do, and now is the time. So take advantage of it and get it done. Outside of that, the second question was tied to, you had said,
vacation.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because where can we go right now? Let's be honest. Vacations are meant to be out and exploring and doing things that are fun, and I think that's a tough situation, regardless, because there's not a whole lot that we can do, and that's what we want to use our vacation time for. And I got to tell you, people want to stay busy as they possibly can. And so I think it's more about what kind of a process can you put in place, and how can you be communicating that going forward when we get back to some kind of this new normal that we're going to be faced with, and when people can start to travel or just be home but go out and do things. That should be what you're focusing in on, not I wish people were taking vacation now. The only thing I would suggest, and I've seen this a number of times from other business owners, is that they're providing this paid time off for quite a while to support their children right now with the homeschooling. I mean, I have 4 or 5 weeks left of getting my second grader and preschooler through school. And so there's a significant amount of stress that comes with that. And so if we think that that could help, maybe tie that into a discussion where you're supporting them, you understand that this is a difficult time, and that this would be the time to take some time off, and that you respect it and you want that for them.
It's good advice. Thank you. Zawadi, I think you can speak to this. Any ideas for motivating and keeping up morale of essential workers who are exposed directly to the public every day? Many of them are tired and scared.
Yes, that is really important to keep them engaged. And so we have a huddle that we do before the shift, and we've been doing that for forever. And so that's a time for us to talk about the objectives for the day and to just check in and see how they're doing. We have included in that now a time to just decompress, do some calming, some meditation. We even sing songs, and, someone may offer a scripture or inspirational quote, or we may play a game, or, like I said, have a moment of meditation. And so we are doing that, as well as we have joy breaks in between, in the shift. We'll take a break and play some music and dance and, try to, bring some levity and bring some fun into what can be a very stressful environment, because now we're in full, protective, personal protective equipment with the mask and, and everything. And so protecting ourselves as well as our patients. And so, again, doing those frequent check-ins with employees. How are you doing? Are you anxious? Can we talk? How are you handling this? Do you feel like we've provided enough assurances for your safety, for your well-being? And so that constant communication and checking in with them, as well as keeping them informed of what's going on. We send them bulletins on the latest information on, the virus and what's going on in our area with it. And so making sure that they're informed and making sure that they feel like they are safe and cared for.
Thank you. Joel, this person says, how do you personally stay motivated so that you can motivate your staff when there's nothing positive going on and no end in sight? Just how do you keep yourself going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one thing that I really do is I try to read a lot of articles, business books, things like that, things that would help me personally become better. So like self-improvement type stuff. I mean, to me, I always say this: information is motivation. Some bad information could be bad motivation, I guess, but trying to focus on good information and what I've been doing over the last, what I have actually consciously tried to do, especially over the last week, I've been watching and reading the news a little less than I was before. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I have actually just a little bit less. And what I have been trying to do is focus myself a little bit more on just other things, other regular business articles that I might read, or books that I'm reading, and those types of things really kind of pull me out of hey, what the horrible stuff that's going on, to, hey, you know what? There's still a lot to learn. There's still a lot to become good at and get better at what I do. And then I think, when I do that, man, I get motivated, and I want to tell everybody else about it. And I'm like, man, you guys ought to read this article or that article, because that's going to be helpful. And so, I mean, I think for me, that's something that I've personally done.
Thank you. We have time for one more question, but I want each of you to answer this question. So I'm going to start with you, Alissa. What operational or company culture changes do you think will stick around after the pandemic is over and things go back to whatever normal looks like?
Well, flexibility, number one, that is something that is going to be very evident. And I think if you're not able to be flexible, it might hurt you. I would say the ability to be more virtual, no matter what, that's a big thing that a lot of people are figuring out. In some ways, they're going to continue to do it. because it's maybe cost savings, it's just as productive, so on and so forth. And then I would say the empathy, the communication, the transparency, those types of cultural components, they're pillars. They're pillars. And you know, when people talk to us about if we're working with a candidate, one of the number one questions they ask is, what is their culture like? And I can guarantee you one of their number one questions will be after this, how did they handle themselves as a business during COVID? I know it because of the number of times we focus on culture and we talk about our clients and who they are. That's the heart of your business. And you need to be focusing on your culture. The thing I should have said in that last question I answered, another thing you can do is work on your culture. If you don't have one, this is the time to put something in place. I am happy to share a free culture exercise, kind of document process we go through. If you're interested, you can reach out to me to get you started, but focus on that culture. But these are the things, from flexibility to being more virtual to being more empathetic and transparent. That's going to be a big part of how we move forward. Once we get through this, hopefully soon, right? But those are going to be part of our business.
Thanks, Alissa. Zawadi, how about you? What do you think that you've started during the pandemic that will stick with your business?
Well, I would just ditto everything that Alissa said. And so I guess unfortunately, we had, not as drastic of a scenario before, but during Hurricane Harvey in 2017, we experienced, a rapid, unexpected decline in business, and we had to adapt and become flexible. And, again, what really sustained us then and what's sustaining us now is a very robust culture. Company culture. We have 10 values that we live by. Like Joel said, half of our performance review is based on skill and performance, and the other half is based on our values. And so that has really sustained us, and it's gonna sustain us, beyond this. And so again, if you haven't adopted a culture of flexibility and a firm culture where everybody understands, the value that they bring to the table, I would really encourage you to focus on that while you have this downtime.
Thank you. Joel, we have 1 minute. What are you guys gonna keep doing when this is over, besides making pancakes?
Yeah, we're gonna keep making pancakes. I can tell you that. I think I love what you guys said about culture, because that really is like the foundation. So I would just kind of echo that, and it's never too late. Like, I think the thing I would say is, I said it a little bit, but crisis allows for it becomes opportunity for change. So if you haven't done things, or you're looking at your business going, man, I got to do that, then just do it. But the thing is, people right now, we are all so open to change. We want it, we embrace it. We are all, I think a couple things that I think will last though for a while is, I think people are going to be more careful, more conservative, a little more frugal with funds, and I think everyone kind of expects that. So if there are things you need to cut out of your business that you don't need, then this is a great time to do it. And then I just think we're all going to be more appreciative for what we have. I think we're going to appreciate our jobs if we have one still, or when we find a new job. I mean, that is really good. And I think as employers, we need to treat people really, really well, because people want to be treated well. People are going to appreciate what we can do for them, and they're going to be willing to perform at their best, because they want, people, we want to have a great job, and we want to be in a great situation with a good employer. So I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to embrace this opportunity for change for the better.
Thanks so much. Zawadi, Joel, Alissa, thank you all so much. This was great. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. I really appreciate it. Now, next week, we're going to be talking about the rise of cyber threats during this time and how you can protect your business against them. So that's next Wednesday. Workshop is next Wednesday at the same time. And in the meantime, please check out growwithco.com. We've got tons of content for small businesses on how to deal with the coronavirus and how to start thinking about running your business after this is all over and you're back in growth mode. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.